If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
And we are back. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friends Khalid Mohammed from Command 11 in Pakistan. And got to get myself centered here. I'm all bent out of shape today from work going off the rails. And my good friend Randy Nance, below him, combat wounded Green Beret, back home in Texas. So tonight we're going to be discussing the black market rising after 9/11 2.0 and what that's going to look like. And Randy can actually speak to that a little bit. And I might actually just open with that right after the conflicted question, Randy, as far as what happened in Baghdad, just the timeline. And then we're going to go into the Command 11 sit rep. We're going to cover that until approximately the 1 hour mark. Then Randy's going to jet and Mike Glover will be joining us for the main topic. But Randy, I think I want to hear you talk about when Baghdad fell again, just for our audience. What did that look like in the first day, the second day, all the way out to say 3 or 4 weeks down the road?
Well, when we first pulled into town, as you can imagine, it just fell. So it was literally like the Wild Wild West. There was guns going off every night in all different directions. But once it actually finally fell, and everybody knew that, and then there was, all the Saddam and his sons were gone. There really was no police force. The army was gone. And now it was just us. And literally for 3 days, there was a level of looting that you can only describe as biblical. Every single person in the city was out and stealing every single thing from every building and off of the street. It didn't matter what it was. They literally emptied every building of everything inside of it and everything that wasn't bolted down, and even some of that stuff. They literally carried everything off, and it was all day long and into the night. And then the command came down, and that's when we were told to stop the looting. Up until that point, they told us just to let them, don't do anything about it. So we just watched. That's really what we did for 3 days. Once we started stopping them, they weren't too happy about that, but it did stop. But shortly thereafter, within the next day or two, you had the criminal element come out. And talking about the criminal element, we're talking about more street crime, but there were also some bigger elements of guys that apparently already had some sort of network or a cell already built out, so to speak, because they came out and, then they they'd have roadblocks. They had roving roadblocks where they drove around and would stop people. And basically what those people were doing is they were robbing everybody that was out of anything that they had. They also killed and raped and that kind of thing. And literally after that, for the next 2 weeks, that's when we went back out on the streets, because the level of crime and the amount of people that were out and shooting and doing whatever they wanted was off the chain. And so literally that's when we had to go back down, and it literally took us 2 full weeks of every day and every night. And certainly after, because there was martial law, and I want to say it was 9 p.m., probably at latest it was 10 p.m. There was a curfew. So anybody out past that curfew got rolled up. And that was hundreds of people every night. And no, it was at least a couple hundred every night. And so what ends up happening when there's a power gap is the people that have power on the criminal side come out and take over. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, so the reason I asked you to cover that, Randy, is just to give people an idea of what would happen in any city, any civilized city, when the shit hits the fan. That's not an Iraqi thing. That's a human nature thing. We would do that. I guarantee you it would happen. If New York City fell the same way, we would see the same. Well, we already saw it somewhat, didn't we, during 2020? Yeah.
And some of the other Minneapolis, the other cities that we saw Targets and all kinds of other stores just completely emptied out in a matter of minutes. And that's exactly what we're talking about. So that's a human nature thing, and we're no different. When it happens, if something like that was to happen here, you're going to see something of very similar activity.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little bit messing around with all my gear tonight. It's all kind of discombobulated tonight. All right, let's get to the conflicted question of the night first. So conflictedthegame.com. These are 14 different card games that are set in a post-apocalyptic settings. There's typically some element of morality to the questions, hence the name Conflicted. And here's tonight's. After being forced out of your bug out location by looters, you and your bug out group of 20 people, half of them children, walk for hours in a snowstorm looking for shelter. You find a 45-foot insulated truck trailer that would be perfect shelter. Within days of moving in, a family contracts a life-threatening virus. Sickness and death could spread through the entire group if they stayed. Throwing them out into the snowstorm would surely mean the infected family's death. What would you do in this situation and why? Wow,
man, y'all are picking some doozies lately.
I don't know. This must be like the climate change thing. Because if we had snow like that here in Florida, I think the whole world would be upside down.
You know it would. You know it would.
And we don't go anywhere where there's snow. That stuff is just.
Hey, well, do you remember it snowed in the 90s? That's when we came to Orlando and Daytona, and we were driving in. And man, it snowed, and there was a wreck every quarter mile or pile up. It was absolutely ridiculous. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, we had snow New Year's Day 2005 here that threw things for a total clustered. It was ice. And then we had it happen again. I think it was 2010. There's a whole story that goes with that. I shouldn't actually be here. My wife dropped me off at the Daytona airport. I was supposed to fly to Atlanta, then New York, then Buffalo. And so they roll us out onto the runway and there's ice on the plane. And they said, well, we're going to have to delay this flight because we don't have any de-icing equipment. So we got to wait for the sun to come out and melt it. It was like 0600 in the morning. So I had like a 30-minute layover in Atlanta, and they said, you are not going to make that layover. So I called my wife. She was heading up the interstate towards Georgia. She comes back, picks me up. That plane that I was supposed to be on from New York to Buffalo is the one that crashed into that neighborhood in Buffalo and killed 230 some odd people on it. I was supposed to be on that plane. So anyway, just another reason why I'm the Forrest Gump of the tech world, right? I somehow survived these things by the skin of my teeth. But let's get into the first article tonight. And golly, I'm so far behind today. I think I'm in first. I'm trying to see who we've got queued up for the very first one. It's Randy. So, all right, let me get you back center stage, Randy. Let me pull this article up. And here we go. This is why we actually have a friend of ours, Nick, behind the scenes tonight. Smart guy checking out how everything functions here inside of StreamYard that's going to take over the production. And then you don't have to listen to me whine about needing a producer any longer. All right, so this one in your backyard, Randy. This morning at Dallas Ice Field office, there was a shooting resulting in multiple injuries and fatalities. The shooter died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. This violence against our ICE law enforcement must stop. Please keep the victims and their families in your thoughts and prayers. This was early, so there's some updated information. I think we have another one to play after this for Khalid, but 1 minute, 44 seconds.
Director, thank you for being here. I want to say you were coming in. We were talking to you anyway. Obviously, this event has sort of subsumed what we were going to discuss. What can you tell us about this incident in Dallas?
Yeah, literally, as I was coming here, we were notified that there were shots fired at our Dallas field office. Right now, preliminary information is a possible sniper. We have 3 individuals that are down at this time. We're not sure on their condition. They've been taken to the hospital. We're hearing some reports that the shooter may be down from the Texas Department of Public Safety. The scene's secure. You know, obviously right now, my hearts and prayers are going out to my officers and agents. That's my biggest concern, and as well as everyone in that area. But this just shows the violence that's being increased against ICE officers and agents. This is the second time now we've had a shooting at one of our facilities in the Dallas area. And really, it's just a sad time that we have to worry about violence against law enforcement.
So you're hearing the reports you're hearing at this point are coming from inside your offices in Dallas at ICE. You're hearing directly from them?
Yeah, we're hearing directly from the leadership on the ground there. The building is on lockdown, building secure. Initial reports are that our offices are accounted for, but there are 3 individuals that are shot.
Are the 3 individuals ICE employees?
we're still working on that right now. Obviously, it's really chaotic. Dallas Police Department's been great. They're on scene. It's a large police presence there right now.
I'm going to go ahead and stop that there since we have quite a bit of updated information on it since then. But Randy, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this right on the heels of multiple politicians again and scumbags in the mainstream media calling for, violence against ICE. Yesterday, Gavin Newsom did a broadcast and specifically said to go after these people.
Yep.
Well, again, because we're not holding them accountable. How come, now that this happened, how come somebody's not over there, questioning Newsom of why he's doing that? Oh, and the media for putting that kind of stuff out. I look at you look at this attack, and I've got some questions here. Like, well, how does this attack on federal immigration facilities demonstrate the escalation of radical leftist violence? Well, they started on the street, right? And with people and the officers in California, mainly in LA. But if you looked around, that's kind of what they've done. Now that they're actually attacking one of the facilities, that is, in my mind, that's a step up. That's a step up, coming a step closer to the actual issue. And, you got to wonder. I think I haven't seen much on this. It's been a busy day for me too. And I knew that it happened, but I have not seen the updates or any of that. But, I know initially they wanted to come out and I think say this guy was a white supremacist, although he voted for Kamala Harris. It's ridiculous. Clearly and how old is he? I didn't get how. I know he's young. They've been saying this kind of stuff nonstop on the news. Even when he got elected the first time, you remember there was Madonna, there were all kind of stars and rappers that came out and said, kill Trump. And all that is being played 24/7 since 2014. So this kid, 3/4 of his life, probably that's all he's heard. So, this is what happens when people are like that. And he's probably a little unstable to begin with, obviously. Because normal people don't just go pick up a gun and go to a facility just to air out their grievances, we'll say. That's just not normal behavior. Certainly for a kid this age, man, but this is what, and again, lends to the next question. How does carved messaging on ammunition tell us about the premeditation? Well, it's because it's what he's been hearing. So he's writing that on there because it's it's like a visual thing, right? You can like playing golf. I'm a golfer. So I like to visualize the shot when I'm taking a practice shot. So that when I get up, the last thing I do is stare at where I want to go, where the target is in the direction, and I visualize the shot. That's really what you're doing when you're writing stuff on the ammo, right? You're preparing for the event. And this is just one way to mentally help prepare yourself. And you're putting messages on there. So when they read them afterwards too, right? It's a psychological thing. And, it's ridiculous. That's where we are today because of all these people that are constantly able to get away with speaking about violence and then now painting 2/3 of the country as fascist, as Nazis. We need to kill them. We need to get rid of them. And I think I saw after last week, after Charlie Kirk's assassination, they did a study somewhere, and basically they did a survey at college campuses, and 38% of them said it was okay, or they believed it was okay to resort to violence to settle your political issues, and that was up 14 or 18% from a year or two ago. So it shows you how this rhetoric, both on social media, in the media, and our elected officials out there pumping this stuff out nonstop. This is what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think just one more comment on the inscriptions on the shells. This is a copycat crime, and you're gonna see all kinds of copycat crimes like this. And again, this guy was, from what I understand, I did not have a ton of time to study it today, but basically radicalized by Antifa. And so here we go again, the connection back to those nutcases. So Khalid, actually the next one for you is breaking. Antifa surrounded the federal building in Eugene, Oregon to protest ICE. Domestic terrorist group is posted up on the entrances, exits, pounding on doors and windows. Sources inside say employees are having to find alternative exits. 58 seconds.
Fucking be here with your fucking iPhone.
All right. So my first observation there, Khalid, is that all of these nutcases are pretty ugly on the inside and outside.
Yep.
They're a bunch of misfits.
Yep. Now, look, let's go backwards a couple of days. When Trump signed the order saying that Antifa is now a terrorist or a domestic terrorist organization, we expected a response from Antifa. This was going to happen. The problem is, and I mean, from my point of view, I see three problems. Number one, your news media is out of control. There was a FBI official, I don't know, I think he was retired. Christopher O'Leary was on MSNBC and he was saying, well, you know, the shooting in Dallas is very much like the shooting in Christchurch, New Zealand, where a white supremacist went in and shot up a mosque. And he had carved the bullets and he'd written a bunch of stuff on his weapon. That's really cute to say, because if you look at all these transgender crimes, the shootings that all the transgenders have carried out, they've done the same damn thing. So it's nice that you're trying to redirect it the other way. Number two, you've got your politicians that are running their mouths. Like Gavin Newsom should be in jail right now. He incited violence. You should be in jail right now. Period. End of story. I don't care if you're the governor. I don't care if you're the president of the United States. If you incite violence, you should go to jail. Period. End of story. And JD Vance said it. JD Vance in an interview, I think he gave an interview sometime during the day. He said it in the interview. He said, you know, the problem we have is that we do not punish these people. They end up going in front of the Senate committee. They go in front of a House committee and they explain themselves there, but no criminal charges are brought. So they go ahead and keep on doing it. So there's nothing that happens to them. And until you send these people to jail, they will not shut up. Number three, the Anti-Defamation League. These people need to be run out of the U.S. First, this was a month ago. They turned around and they said, America first is hate speech. You're in the United States. How is America first hate speech? Then they turned around and said, Jesus is the savior. That's hate speech as well. Wait a minute. Now, how does that become hate speech? Just the other day, they put out another one saying Christian identity. That is also hate speech.
Yep.
When you have organizations operating like that, trying to strip the Christian identity away from people and try and turning everyone either into a supremacist, a Democrat, a Republican, a violent offender, an extremist, a terrorist, that doesn't work. America is a Christian country, period, end of story. That's where the story ends. America first is what Donald Trump was elected on. That's not hate speech. And when you have organizations that are now criminalizing those statements, you are literally inciting people to violence. The fact that you think that attacking MAGA is a good thing, that is another crime in its own right. For example, let's just take a for example. If the right were to start saying that we should kill all the Democrats, do you not think the media would go nuts?
Oh, yeah.
Would they not start screaming and yelling? Because everyone on the right has weapons. Everyone on the right is pro two-way. Would the media not go nuts, going, "Oh my God, they've called for war. They want this to happen. They want that to happen." But when you do it, it's okay. It's not okay. I don't care if you're on the left or on the right, if you're Republican or a Democrat, the day you call for violence, you have committed a crime, period. End of story.
Yeah, well, their bullshit is all anything that goes counter to their narrative is hate speech. You know.
Yeah, but Chris, wait a minute. Chris, wait, look, hate speech has a very specific definition. And when you start taking Christianity and adding it into hate speech, when you take political slogans and add those into hate speech, then you've gone way out of the boundaries.
That's what I'm saying. Anybody who says something that doesn't agree with their fantasy world is hate speech.
Yeah.
So if you say something pro Christianity, it's hate speech. If you say something anti-trans, it's hate speech. And it's not hate speech. It's just that they're trying to silence people. And
well, I've got another question for you. The Antifa group, Destiny went onto his YouTube channel before it was taken down. Thank God. He went onto his YouTube channel and said, "I am starting a movement saying un-F America." And everywhere the Christians are getting together, Antifa and all of the left is going to get together, protest, create violence, and do whatever we need to do to keep these people from being able to get together and talk about what they want to talk about. Where do you get that right? The First Amendment guarantees freedom of speech. End of story. Just like you have the right to talk, we have the right to talk. I don't understand where you get the idea that you can go and counter political conversation, social conversation with violence. You are turning into the third world.
Yeah, no kidding. So explain this one here, Clete. It went with the story.
What happened was the protest was in Eugene, Oregon. Portland, Oregon's Antifa group announced solidarity and said, we all need to go to Eugene and attack ICE together. Now, that means you are now starting to coordinate your attacks. So you are no different than a terror organization.
True story. And that seems to me, there's your RICO component.
Yep. Because look, when I, for example, say, okay, all the extremist Muslims in Dallas and all the extremist Muslims in Houston, let's get together and attack Austin, Texas. That's RICO. That's an organized, coordinated attack. That is a RICO charge.
100%. 100%. All right, moving on to the next one here for you, Randy. Tulsi Gabbard opened up an investigation into James Comey, John Brennan, a couple of scumbags. 1 minute, 3 seconds, and then a few questions for you.
Fox News alert, the FBI has just launched criminal investigations into two former Obama officials, former CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI Director James Comey, for their involvement in the Russia hoax. Sources say Director Brennan is under investigation for lying to Congress, and that Brennan and Comey were involved in a conspiracy. Brennan apparently told Congress that he didn't have anything to do with the Steele dossier. But we're hearing that Brennan's two top CIA officers warned the director not to touch it and called it an internet rumor. But Brennan pushed it hard anyway. Both Obama's FBI director and CIA director basically knew the Trump Russia hoax came from Hillary Clinton's campaign, but they both used it to smear and investigate Donald Trump. Comey and Brennan's security clearances have both been stripped by the sitting president, and Comey just had a sit down with the Secret Service over seashells. This is the beginning of a major confrontation.
Yeah, long overdue. So, Randy, I want to get to your thoughts on Tulsi actually opening these investigations, but do you think anybody's going to get charged and be held accountable? Like, does anybody really believe that anymore?
Well, it's nice to see that they actually are looking into it, but it's like this whole year. We're now in, dang near October, and no one's been arrested for anything or held accountable for anything, which both of these individuals, we all know, are culpable. They are guilty. They both lied to Congress. They both were part of a conspiracy. They were both part of a coup to overthrow the sitting president. We could go and list out probably another 100 charges because they all both had something to do with the Steele dossier. They all knew that it was a lie. They still continue to push it. So they just racked up crimes of treason left and right. But unfortunately for us, as it appears, they're on the left, and somehow we seem to never hold those people accountable. They will charge anybody on the right. And we saw what they did to President Trump during the last 4 years with all kinds of trumped up charges that don't even exist and were illegal, but they did it anyway. And they went ahead and did it. However, here we are now, and we've watched this entire year, and no one's been held accountable for this stuff. These people should have been held accountable a long time ago because the proof and the evidence is all over the place. Like what they said in the beginning about Trump with Russia. Oh, there's plenty of evidence. It's all Schiff, right? Was the one that said that, I think. There's plenty of evidence out there. It's just, we just need to reel it in now, which wasn't true. But it lends to the same thing. You know, what I really think it is, they're not going to hold anybody on the left accountable because they want to start a civil war. They can't, and World War III, in fact. They want to start a war here. And it looks like since 2014 and probably since before then, that they've been trying to bait us into a race war, into a civil war, into anything they can. And they let the left do whatever they want to keep dialing it up because they think sooner or later we're going to make the call. And eventually they're probably right. But I would suggest that I think that's exactly what they're waiting for. And I've said all along, you got to ask yourself, what do they have in their back pocket, or what do they think that they have is so good that they're not worried about starting a civil war? Because in historic times, once that starts, it's almost impossible to stop, and no one can lay out exactly how it's going to go. But we do know that they have been manipulating the weather. We do know when we saw after October 7th, that one triangle thing up there shooting, what was it? An energy weapon of some sort. We don't know what they have, but clearly they have something that, which is also, I think, why they already deemed the white middle-aged man as the biggest threat, because they know what their plans are. They know what they want to do. And the only people standing in front of them when they want to try to do that, the only people that will stand up to stop it is us.
Yep.
Yeah, I could roll with that, but I get enough emails every day accusing me of being a white supremacist. But I got one question before I let you off the hot seat, Randy.
Yep.
What happens when the Democrats steal another election? What happens to all the people, including us, as far as retribution is concerned over this stuff going after Comey and Brennan? They started it with Trump. But look at all the investigations that were open into, J6ers, all kinds of people who did nothing but vote against Obama and the Democrats, and they wanted to crush all of us.
Well, I don't remember who said it. It was one of the politicians. It might have even been Biden or it was Harris, right? One of them said, you better watch out after we get back in the White House because we're coming after you.
Yeah.
And that's what we will see. At this point, now it's gotten pushed to the point when the Democrats do, and eventually they will get back into office, and hopefully it's a much later than sooner, which we can maybe hopefully iron this out before then. But if we don't, the next time they get in office, they are going to come after us, and they aren't like us. They don't care if it's legal or not. They're going to punish us. And there's no doubt about that. They will come after folks like you and us on the show and many others, because just look what they did during January 6th. Mm-hmm. Including the one girl you had on that was in the military and then had a contract at the Space Force and then fired.
Yep.
But she never even went in. You walked around before it all happened. But because they were able to go back and see her on video, and apparently they've treated the veterans that were there far worse than the other, but they didn't treat anybody good. And all of it was illegal, but clearly it doesn't matter because they were in power and they're going to do what they want to do. And apparently no one will stop them. But when we get in, we just don't do anything about it. And I don't know why that is. I do not know why that is.
Yeah, I don't either, but appreciate that. So next up, we've got an article or a post, I should say, from Sarah Adams. This one's going to go to Clede. So a call to local action against the Al-Qaeda threat. We've received too many reports that a number of statewide fusion centers have not distributed the Office of the Director of National Intelligence's National Counterterrorism Centers Al-Qaeda threat reporting to local law enforcement in their states. If agencies are unwilling to act, then everyday Americans must take responsibility to ensure These materials reach the people who need them. The scale and scope of the next attack on the U.S. homeland will be unlike anything we've seen before. You must take action now to prepare your community, because if you don't, no one else will. Please print the ODNI press release and the NCTC memo itself and deliver hard copies to nearby law enforcement offices, fire stations, and hospitals. Veteran communities will be among the most affected by Al-Qaeda's upcoming plot after Washington, D.C. and the aviation sector. If you live in an area with a large veteran population, also be sure to alert city officials, churches, synagogues, schools, shopping centers, and public transportation hubs as well. Thank you for doing the right thing for your communities. If this threat is not thwarted by our federal government, it falls to us to be prepared to limit casualties in our hometowns and to protect the people that we love the most. So Sarah said a mouthful there. One quick thing, and then I'm going straight to you, Khalid. Randy pulled up a notification. I think it came from SOCOM, didn't it, Randy, that said that veterans in Florida were in danger of being attacked by ISIS or AQ or both.
I think it was USASOC command,
USASOC,
but either way, it's the same thing, just, yeah.
So we were on air, Khalid, and that warning went out. And Randy is the first person that I saw break that story. Nobody else did it for a few hours. But Randy, do you want to hear something ironic? That was based on Sarah Adams. That was
really
her,
no kidding.
That was
Full
her.
circle.
Yeah,
Full circle there, baby.
Bingo. Yep. So Khalid, I'm going to turn it over to you to discuss what Americans can do about this, because this is getting ridiculous, right?
Yeah. The problem is, I don't even know where to start with this one. We worked so hard to get Joe Kent to put the alert out, but at this point, the alert has only come out at the federal level. It has not come down to the states. It has not come down to the counties. It has not come down to the cities. It has not been distributed amongst first responders yet. And we've been following this. We've been talking to a lot of people about this and saying, listen, do us a favor. Take the printout, go to your local police station. Just drop it off. You don't even have to talk to anybody. Just hand it to them. They can go and verify it themselves that this came out of NCTC. This is what the threat is. This is what the warning is. This is what you need to know. From there onwards, we have ways to inform and educate and move them forward. But the problem is the fear we have. And I talked to Sarah about this the other night. I said, what's the story? Sarah said, Joe put this thing out, but we think the Trump administration is blocking it from getting down to state level. It was more of one of the cosmetic releases that, okay, we've recognized the threat. We've told you about the threat, but we're not going any farther than this. And if that's the case, you have got a massive problem coming in the U.S. because we're talking to first responders, and first responders are saying the same thing. We haven't seen a threat release, and we're sending them via email, via a person going into the station. We're actually sending them the NCTC release saying, this was released on Friday. Haven't you seen this yet? Do you not use social media yet? The second problem we have with this, a lot of people, since it's come out, because a certain person tweeted it and took credit for it, all of a sudden the Al-Qaeda threat has turned it into an Israeli false flag. That this isn't a real threat. This is a false flag that Israel's going to run to get attention back towards Israel, get everyone back on Israel's side. And you are literally setting yourself up for a major amount of bodies falling. Because if you take this as a joke, we have not worked for 18 months to put this thing together. We did not bang on every door in the government to get this alert to come out, to have somebody turn it into something else. And every single person that's been involved in this, is now being blasted for misinformation, disinformation, making this up, not credible, not telling the whole story. Sarah was hammered. We've been hammered. Jane Doe is off the radar, so no one can get to her. You guys need to understand this threat is real. This is not playtime for us. We're not just spending our time talking about this because we need something to talk about. There's many other things we can talk about other than a terrorist threat to the U.S. We're raising your awareness because this is going to happen. We want you to be ready. We want you to protect yourselves. there are people out there that are playing the negative side of this to try and dissuade you from being ready. And you need to understand that there are a lot, anyone who's attacking this thing, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the problem here is that the chain of command is used to information coming from certain directions, right?
Yep.
So Ryan Geho and we spoke to an officer in South Carolina. This is a good news story for a change. But when he took the information that you and Sarah had provided and that I put in a nice little bundle for them, he came back and spoke to Ryan because they're close to each other, physically close to each other. And he said to Ryan, yeah, my chief doesn't believe this because it didn't come from up above. He's like, how come the feds aren't telling us anything, right? Well, then Joe Kent put the warning out last week, which was based on his meeting with Sarah several weeks before that. That guy reached out to Ryan either yesterday or today. It's all a blur. All my days blend together. And the chief is now taking it seriously. Yep. We also have people who shall remain unnamed because I don't want to put anybody at risk, but we have guardians in our private signal chat that are doing exactly this. And one of them texted me not too long ago saying, gee, I wonder how deep the Texas DPS has gone up my ass since I dropped this on.
Yeah. Yep.
So true story. Anyway, this next one's for you, Randy. Going to change gears a bit. And then I do have some additional stories on the Dallas shooter that provide a little bit more up-to-date detail on it. Dash cam video, Chinese truck driver unable to speak English obtains CDL in California, causes horrific crash. Here's another instance of blood on Gavin Newsom's hands. American Truckers United has learned of a horrific crash caused by a driver from China who obtained a commercial driver's license in California despite speaking only Mandarin. This tragic incident occurred on June 4th, 2023 in New Mexico. How many crashes like this have gone unreported? How many truck drivers from China are operating on U.S. roads? Why has the American Trucking Association remained silent during this highway safety epidemic? LNX Transportation was based out of San Gabriel, California, now well known for nest of labor dumping operations. 20 seconds.
Oh, goodness.
That is all over Gavin Newsom's hands. There's no other way to. What a disgusting event. So this one's for you, Randy. Let me just get you popped up here. And I sent you a couple of questions in the brief, but feel free to roll with whatever angle that you want on this.
Well, I just think it's, the guy only speaks Mandarin. Does that mean he only reads Mandarin as well, or can he even read? So I don't know how you get a driver's license if you can't speak English. You're not going to be able to read the street signs. And of course, that didn't even factor into that wreck. He just never stopped. Must have been on his phone or something else. We can't see the camera that's looking at him, but it appears he never even hit the brakes. You don't see that vehicle slow down at all. And then you got to wonder, man, are they doing this intentionally? Because how do you give somebody like this a CDL license and put them in and then let them get a job driving a semi truck around the freeways in our country? Because it's just dangerous. You know what I mean? To me, it's hard for me to wrap my head around and how many does California put out now? Yeah. How many of these are we going to see from licenses that they gave truck drivers? Well, and I think this guy was illegal, right? He wasn't even he's one of the Chinese, I guess, that came in. Yeah.
I don't know, but the guy who was Khalid, what are the guys? Are they Sikhs, the ones who have the turban on?
Yeah. Yep, they're Sikhs.
Yeah,
yep.
So we had a Sikh who was only able, Randy, to identify 1 out of 12 road signs in a test in California that decided to do a U-turn here on the Florida Turnpike. And he cut in front of a car, went underneath his trailer, and killed 3 people. And we ended up getting him extradited from California back here to Florida, and he's up on vehicular manslaughter. But
what kind of safety checks are they doing then? I mean, you think about that. What
can I jump in?
Yeah, come on.
Okay, the thing that's going on here, and there was videos that ran on social media with this. All of these non-English speaking drivers, what they're doing is they've got an earpiece in their ear when they go in to take the CDL exam, and they've got a camera on their chest. and there's a person who is watching outside the testing center and telling them what answer to mark. That's how they're passing these tests. I'm not kidding. This is documented on social media. We've seen the videos. This is how they're getting these tests passed. There's not a point anywhere where someone stops them and says, okay, what does this sign mean? What does this sign mean? What does this sign mean? Those questions not being asked. If you remember back a couple of months ago, Chris, there was a trucker who was going around the US, and he said, every single truck stop I stop at, 90% of the CDL holders cannot speak a lick of English.
Yeah.
And they have CDL licenses.
It's just insanity. Like, there's no other way to describe it. Completely.
Well, it has to be intentional, because how you gonna let people come in and take a test with a camera? You know what I mean? You would think, I don't care how high speed it is, you would be able to catch somebody like that just by being in the same room, watching them fill out the answers. It's not hard.
Yeah. So good question here, by the way, from, check this out. CDL holder here. Do you think they may be using this as some form of terrorism?
Well, you'd have to think it's intentional.
It is intentional. There's no question it's intentional. I mean,
if you think about it, if you the amount of explosives you could put into one of those trucks, just let's take it from that point of view.
Yeah.
If one of these CDL drivers who doesn't know how to speak English, and if you remember, there was an active shooter situation in in a city. There was a truck that was stopped on an expressway, and every vehicle was pushed back. And the bomb squad came. They checked him out. The guy could not speak English. He didn't know what he was doing there. The vehicle had just stopped. He was 10 miles away from a major military base. He was on a major expressway, and the guy couldn't speak a lick of English.
Yeah. But not only they don't speak English, they can't read it. They can't decipher what our signs say or mean.
Well, how would you? How would you?
Buff the Cat, one of those truckers, almost killed me a few weeks back. Not surprised. It's unbelievable. But moving along to the next one here, this is for you, Khalid. And we're back to the shooter in Dallas, by the way. So breaking, both CNN and MSNBC are in damage control after the press conference where law enforcement officers confirmed the attacker is a far left radical. Even they can't deny that this is a copycat following in the footsteps of other extremists. Let me pull this.
Got there. What was your top takeaway listening?
Well, one other clarification, Anna, which is that they're now saying that one person, in addition to the shooter, was killed, not two. So one person killed, two injured, in addition to the shooter, if I heard that correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. But
that's what I got too. Two people deceased, including the shooter.
Okay. And look, I think the bullet casings engraved with anti-ICE messages is a huge and key revelation in this case, because this is now the third instance of targeted violence where we're seeing that. Obviously, the Charlie Kirk assassination and the Luigi Mangione alleged killing of the United Healthcare CEO in New York being the others, and that suggests that there's a copycat phenomenon going on here, and the fact that they're investigating this as a potential act of targeted violence, I think we can conclude that ICE was targeted here based on that piece of evidence. That is extremely significant, and just cast this in a new light and suggest that this is the latest in a series of incidents that really underscore the problem that we are experiencing right now in this country with politically motivated violence.
Let's just be clear here. Politically motivated violence on the left, not conservatives, not libertarians, lowercase l, not MAGA Republicans, whatever you want to call us. This is a one-sided problem. And I'm thankful they're mentioning some of the stuff, but they're still not all the way there. Let's have a look at this one. I'm not going to play the whole thing. It's 2 minutes and 54 seconds long. So I'm just going to play a portion because I'd like to see them eat crow. And then I'm coming straight to you, Khalid.
Okay.
Is being written on the shell casings found near the shooter, who we are told took his own life after the shooting, gives us some now direction as to motive. Anti-ICE messages. We also heard from the ICE official who, making a turn, said, referring to the July 4th shooting you and I were talking about a short time ago at another ICE location from an individual who fired from on the ground, that the rhetoric has to stop. He said, it just has to stop. There is no secret, given the events of the last couple of weeks, that we are in a very brittle time in terms of politics, in terms of rhetoric, and in terms of violence. What we now are hearing from people briefed on this investigation is the following, which is this was a busy morning. It's prior to 7 a.m. Teams that have been out executing arrests in the early morning hours are coming back in with detainees to this facility, and that one of these, a van, not a van, we are told, from ICE, but from another agency, another federal agency that was out making arrests on behalf of ICE, is approaching that location, and that suddenly, from an elevated location, someone opens fire on that van. Now, Pam, you know these vans. We've seen them before at federal facilities. Typically,
I'm going to go ahead and stop it there, because really the key thing, FBI rounds found near shooter's body had anti-ICE writing. If that doesn't indicate what side of the equation is doing this, nothing will. But Khalid, roll a little bit further as far as like the Antifa connection. And Randy, I have another video coming up after this one. Speaks more to Antifa.
You shot at the Sally port of the ICE center. You shot where they were taking the people they arrested in. You did not shoot at ICE officers. You did not shoot at people coming on duty. Let's be clear on what happened here. You shot at people that had been arrested. You did not shoot at the ICE officers. The 3 people that were injured were detainees. They were not police officers. They were not ICE officers. This was something else. The color the left is trying to give it, it's not what it is. I said this earlier today. I said, wait a minute. This could just as easily be a cartel hit. You picked up 3 people that were very key to the cartels. They knew those people would make a deal so they wouldn't have to be deported from the U.S. The cartels sent somebody out and they said, take him out. And they fired on 3 people. I don't understand. If your attack was meant for ICE, you carved anti-ICE onto your bullets. Yet you didn't shoot an ICE officer. You didn't shoot an ICE official. You shot at detainees. This is a story they're trying to turn in a different direction. This was a hit from my point of view. This was not somebody going after the ICE officials. Yes, it happened at an ICE detention facility. Yes, there were ICE officials in the area, but the shots were taken at detainees, not at ICE officials. Now, the carvings on the bullets, I'm going to start off from Christopher O'Leary, who was on MSNBC right as the shooting was happening. He said, wait a minute. This is just like what happened in Christchurch in New Zealand when they attacked the mosque. I'm going, you're an idiot. You're connecting this attack with an attack on Muslims. You're an idiot. Because he went white supremacist. I went, okay, now you're really stupid. Because if you're shooting at detainees, what does a white supremacist have to do with shooting at detainees? They've been arrested. They're being taken into jail. They're being deported. Why were they shooting at detainees? That's the big question here. Is your firing was not at ICE officials. It was not at ICE officers. It was not at ICE vehicles. What was the point of writing anti-ICE slogans on your bullets? Big question for me. Number 2, the left is now going to do as much as they possibly can to roll this thing back so that it doesn't stick on the far left, and it doesn't stick to Antifa. It does not stick to radicalization. It does not stick to the side they support, because they did everything they possibly could when the shooting first happened to paint this as a far right, a white supremacist. When that thing fell apart, they started backtracking. They started to try to paint a new story that, no, it's like this happened on this date, this happened in this, and this happened in this. Let's go back. The last shooting that we had that had carvings on the bullets was Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, and that's what really shows it as being a pattern, right?
Yep.
So, and by the way, just want to mention, somebody had asked if the ammo looked like 8mm, and that's exactly what it was. It was 8mm Mauser ammunition, 7.92 by 57. And I've got one here for you, Randy. And actually, while you're answering it, I think I've got some 8mm in my drawer here that I'll pull out so people can see it in just a minute. But let me play this next one for Randy. We've got Mike Glover joining us imminently. So the last one's going to go to you here, Randy. 59 seconds. Breaking. It's confirmed that Joshua John is the shooter at the ICE facility in Dallas this morning. We now know that he is part of Antifa. Here's the receipts.
I'm Carlin Borisenko. I'm an analyst and independent journalist covering the far left in America. And breaking news, the shooter at the ICE facility in Dallas is confirmed to be Joshua John. And we have confirmed that Joshua John is indeed a revolutionary communist that is a member of Antifa. And I'm going to show you the evidence. Now, when I first saw Joshua's picture today, I have to be honest, I said to myself, that is exactly what I would expect a member of Antifa to look like, but we don't want to go on looks alone. And then this profile of John surfaced with what appears to be a communist photo. And when we zoom in, yep, that's that's pretty communist. That's pretty communist right there. I did question if this was real, and it does look like it did come from Laura Loomer. Laura Loomer might be crazy, but she is great for research and information like this. So it is confirmed that the ICE shooter is indeed a member of Antifa, because Antifa is the militant, violent arm of the far left. If you want more, you can follow my work over on Substack, Carlin, KARLYN.substack.com. I'm Carlin Borisenko. I'm an analyst and independent journalist covering the far left in America. And breaking news, Sorry,
apologies for that. Carrying on. Randy, I'd like you to speak to the Antifa piece before we wrap up your segment tonight. And where are we? Do you know where we are? I've just been so freaking busy lately with Trump's declaration that he was going to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization. Has that happened? Has he written an executive order? Or is there anything going on there yet legally that you know of?
I can't speak to that. I don't know either. I've heard the same thing.
Executive order's been done. The executive order's been done. Now it goes to the Secretary of State to go through Congress.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's why we haven't heard anything. That's exactly why. Because once it gets to Congress, they'll probably sit on it. But the reality is, it's just the same thing we've been talking about. One of them, we have a media that's out of control and they cannot tell the truth to save their lives. And when something like this happens, the first thing they're trying to do is make it look like the right did it. Because at this point, it's kind of hard to argue who's actually doing all the political violence. And they can try to say what they want, but it's pretty obvious. And, if there's ties to Antifa, then we should be saying that already. They already know this. He's got it. He put stuff on the bullet, And Khalid had a good point, but he also could have been this guy just doesn't know what he's doing. He went up to the ICE facility where he knows it is, and he just shot bullets into it. And that very well could be it, but it could be something else. The problem is we may never know because we can't get an honest truth from the media about any of it.
Yeah.
And so how are we supposed to track, any of it when they're constantly lying about all of it?
Yep. Well, I think we do a better job of sifting through it than the people who are mesmerized by legacy media, right? They hear one headline,
sure.
They memorize, regurgitate the headline, and it's gospel to them forever thereafter, whether it's proved wrong or not. But
that's the case, Chris, but we're streaming and you got, I don't know how many people on right now, but we don't have you're not a major network that goes on every evening where millions of people can turn it on. That's the problem.
Yeah,
that is the problem. The people that have that access aren't telling the truth.
They aren't.
That's by design, Randy. Look, the media has a script. It's like Chris keeps saying, back in the 80s and 90s, there were 500 owners of TV channels. Now there are 6. There's a script that's written, and that script is regurgitated from national news all the way to domestic, to local channels.
So we're at the top of the hour now. Mike's backstage. So Randy, I appreciate your input tonight. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. And
all right.
Thank you very much, tomorrow. Randy.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Randy.
Yep.
Mr. Mike Glover, how are you?
How are you guys?
Hey, Mike.
Living the dream, one nightmare at a time. You know all about that, don't you?
Samesies.
Yeah. No kidding. I appreciate your time and joining us tonight, Mike. We're going into the next episode of our Long War series, which is 144 episodes. There's 12 different, call them seasons, with 12 episodes each, but they all stand on their own. And this is a really good topic, actually, for Mike to discuss, because he's seen this happen firsthand in other countries, much like Randy saw in Baghdad as well. So we're basically discussing after 9/11 2.0, these complex coordinated attacks across the country, that you end up with these shadow economies happening. So called the black market, combination of everything from honest, legitimate bartering to criminal networks filling voids to, people charging egregious, the dollar won't be worth anything, but egregious amounts for food, fuel, certain things like that. So just want to quickly mention, and Mike can attest this as well. If you would like to get a package of Carnival's food products for free and some merchandise and possibly a few dollars on top of that, if you have a decent social media following, email the URLs to us at support@survivaldispatch.com. Mike and I will have a look at it. And if you have a reasonable following, you don't have to have hundreds of thousands, just a reasonable engagement level, we'll consider adding you to our influencer team on that end. So with that being said, I want to just jump right into this. So Mike, we've had these complex terrorist attacks. This is just setting the stage really quickly. Supply chains are shattered. Private citizens now have to pivot. They have to barter, go through underground networks. You have marauders, looters, all kinds of bad actors at play. How does this pan out in the short term, medium, and long term? I really want to hear your thoughts on the short term, by the way. Maybe expand on what Randy brought up as far as Baghdad, when it just went to hell in a handbasket when things fell apart. But let's start there, Mike. Let me get you over on the other stage here. Give me 2 seconds to get everybody queued up. Dang it, we've got to, there we go. The layouts are changing. Okay, Mike, so what happens after all this stuff? The sky literally falls. Where does it leave us? Barter system, economically, everything.
It's unfortunate because we as a society don't really understand how to barter. We don't know how to negotiate with our neighbors and to navigate this idea that I might have something that somebody else wants, and those might be necessities or resources that are profoundly valuable to other people around me. In other countries, most of the world, that is an everyday occurrence to barter. And so in America, if you don't have something, you go out and you buy it. If you don't have the opportunity to buy it, how are you going to survive? Well, you're either not going to survive or you're going to take it. And so that in lies the problem. We don't understand bartering. We don't prep for bartering. And in the short term, it's going to get ugly because people are scarce of resources. They don't have a lot of resources. They don't have an abundance. They aren't stockpiling. They're not caching. They don't have Carnival on their shelf because it's 25-year shelf life. They're not even thinking about that. And so if you don't prepare, then you're just not going to get by. And when the logistical train stops, people are going to get desperate. And it's going to really quickly turn into the zombie apocalypse, to the Walking Dead very quickly. In most other countries, that's just not how it works because they have bartering systems. They know who the meat guy is because I'm the cheese guy and my neighbor's the milk guy, right? We know who brings in all the imported batteries from the ports and has electronic devices because he has his own shop at the bazaar, which is a market. And so it's not going to fare well. I have done bartering through my Patreon and through my old company where, for example, let me just lie this out. I didn't grow. I bee kept bees on my property and had a really good year. I had gallons and gallons of really good natural honey. I put it out that if you had anything that potentially could be of value, it didn't even have to be equal, like monetarily, but if you thought it was something that you would want to barter with me, let me know. Only a couple dozen people played the game, and it's because they were more rural. They grew up like me in flea markets with OCD and obsessed collectors in my family. Everybody in my family is a collector of comic books, baseball cards, all the things. I actually don't collect anything besides cars. So growing up in that environment and then seeing these more rural people doing it, they knew how to barter. I was trading silver for honey. I was trading knives for honey. I was trading all kinds of cool things that I didn't necessarily need, but it was an exercise in bartering. If you don't understand how to do that, where you get on Facebook Marketplace and you're like, it's $500 firm, no trades. It's like, well, good luck with that. I mean, I talk to guys all the time, and it's funny because I'm obsessed with Facebook Marketplace, but I've actually convinced some guys to open their mind to bartering. Like, do you need anything? Is there anything that you don't have that you need potentially? And then they might say, yeah. Actually, I need a chainsaw. I'm like, well, I have 3 chainsaws. Perfect opportunity for us to work this out. So I'm afraid in the short term, it's not going to fare well. And then, the mid and long term, again, it's about resources. If you don't have the arsenal to protect, defend, and acquire, well, you're going to be ass out. You're not going to have an opportunity. You're not going to survive. I mean, the one thing that's the most significant thing in these preparedness exercises that we never talk about, logistics. If you are dependent on the Walmart providing you everything on your shelf, you are vulnerable, and you should be paying attention.
Mike, let me just back up just for a second and get your thoughts on. So there's some calamity going on. It could be these, complex coordinated terrorist attacks, or it could be something else. Something we see every year during hurricane season here is panic buying. People ignore it, and all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, this Cat 5 is actually going to hit us. And everybody goes hog wild. You get fist fights. You've got a run on certain products. Like, you can't buy a generator to save your life. You can't buy milk, eggs, anything like that. I'd like to get your thoughts on that aspect of just before the shit really hits the fan, and what advice you have for our audience in that regard.
The best advice is stockpile the back end. What I mean by that is don't get bought into this idea that you could buy an entire shipping containers worth of stuff and just leave it, right? You're not going to do that. It's actually really silly to do that because most things do expire. What you do is invest on the back end of increasing your surplus. A great example is like Carnival. I mean, dude, I hate that we've discovered this because I eat it obsessively because it's really quick to make and it's good for just meals. It's freeze-dried meat, but I actually cook it for dinner. So yes, I could have a whole bunch stockpiled on the shelf. What I would prefer, instead of 25-year shelf life food that tastes like cardboard, is things that I'm actually going to eat. So if you have some money, look at it as getting a return on investment. Look at it as like a stock. If you have money and you're going to invest in the stock, treat your preparedness surplus game as stock. Oh, honey, we got an extra $100. What are we going to buy? Well, let's buy $20 worth of 22 LR ammo, $50 worth of food, and another $30 worth of batteries. Well, then what you're doing is you're stockpiling the resources that you use. And I always tell people this, my basement and my cold storage, which isn't cold because I finished out the basement, most houses in Utah, because they're very preparedness centric, are going to have that. I go downstairs like I'm going to Costco with a cardboard box, and I load up everything I need and go up and put it in my fridge and put it in my cupboard so it's readily accessible. Then when I go to Costco, I resupply the back end depending on how much I'm going to invest. So I'm not going to eat crappy food when crap hits the fan. I'm going to be living pretty good. And if you get used to that and you're extending your surplus, then you're going to have an advantage when all hell breaks loose and the logistics supply chain stops.
So you're going to crack up at this. I had a conference call today with Craig Sawman Sawyer and Dean from Carnival. And, we were talking about maybe them using it when they're going these missions to catch the child predators, child sex trafficking people, blah, blah, blah. And I said to Craig, the problem with it, he said, it sounds like a great prepper product. I said, yeah, it would be if it didn't taste so damn good, because every time I get it, I eat it all. My wife's like, what are you doing? You're eating our stock.
I just got done coming back from Jack Osborne's and I let the guys taste it, and now everybody's eating it. It's pretty insane.
But that's too funny. I want to just get Khalid's thoughts on that prepper portion before I go back to Mike, as far as strategies, tactics, buying habits, all that kind of stuff.
Well, we do it here in Pakistan. I mean, this whole economy operates on that. Barter, stock up, having your own gardens. One of the reasons we planted a garden was that we wanted to be able to have something we could trade off for. We have every type of, every season we plant every type of vegetable. So if I need some work done at the house, I'll give you 5, 6, 7, 8 kilos of vegetables, and I'll be able to get my work done without paying you any money. The advantage for me is that not only do I have vegetables, but I have fruit as well. The advantage for me is if an attack were to happen in Pakistan where the entire economy collapsed, I'm completely self-sustained. I don't have to worry about where am I going to get something from, because I've already got it planted. I've already got seed. I've got everything I need to be able to put food in people's hands and get work done for myself. Because Pakistan's is a country where you have a lot of people that have skills. They may not have money, but they have skills. Those skills are valuable. I need a carpenter. I need someone to do cement work. I need someone to do gardening for me. Okay, here, I'll give you this many kilos of food, and you do this many hours of work for me. There's a lot of things you can get when you understand the system. The second thing is you have to learn how to negotiate. Haggling is something you have to learn, because once you enter into a barter system or into a system where the entire economy is gone, you will be looking at people that will people who have something will be charging outrageous rates. You've got to learn how to haggle with them to get that price down to where the amount of money you have delivers some kind of value to you. And I mean, growing up in the US, we never did this unless we went to the farmer's market or we went to a flea market. In Pakistan, we do it every day, no matter where you go. I mean, even if it says fixed price, you start negotiating the price. Well, it may be 50 rupees, but I'll give you 25. And a negotiation starts there. You may end up buying a 50 rupee thing for $30. But it's something I learned when I came here, because I didn't know how to haggle that well when I was in the US. I learned it really well when I came here.
Yeah, I would say it's part of the culture there for sure. So appreciate that, Cleet. So Mike, question for you. When these cities collapse, just like you saw when you served overseas, what happens when you get information scarcity? In other words, all of the news that people are getting is just from the rumor mill, because all the infrastructure like data networks, et cetera, are down. What does that do as far as the overall danger of the environment is concerned? And I mean danger as in you're cooking a meal and somebody can smell your food, and now you just put a big bullseye on your back. Just curious what your thoughts are. How do you defend against stuff like that?
Well, your cortisol goes down suddenly when you get off social media. That's something that happens naturally. And also, depending on your community and how you're kind of lined out, I mean, people are very resilient naturally, even without skill sets. The book called War by Sebastian Junger talks about World War II when England was being bombarded, which they've quickly forgotten their past, but they were bombarded by the Germans and were being blasted into an apocalyptic scenario where they would wake up and most of the neighborhoods would be destroyed, and the people that lived through the explosions and the bombing were banding together to help dig out the bodies, to bury them and pull their resources together. And that's what naturally happens. I mean, we see it in natural catastrophes that happened in Florida and North Carolina. People naturally do that. Now, the problem is, depending on where you're at, there are a lot of people who, for whatever reason, maybe even because of malice intent, will look to exploit you. And so if there's an opportunity to take advantage of you, they will. And that's scary. It really is the Walking Dead scenario where you're not really sure who to trust. That's why it's important to build your community and your tribe in advance. Know who your real friends are. Know who just doesn't have your back. We talked about it on a podcast with Kyle Thompson, where we talked about being like the 3 a.m. friend, the friend that you can call and they'll show up with a shovel and they won't ask questions. That's what kind of friend you want. Your associates who have to feed their own family in potential desperation might become your enemy. And you might not even know it until it's too late. So again, build a relationship with your tribe, build that rapport, have them over for barbecue, and maybe they don't realize it, but you're building an auxiliary network. I mean, when I built out American Contingency, the goal was across the nation with thousands of members that there's always a group of people that you could depend on. I think you need to build that group in order to survive this kind of scenario.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mike. I want to just quickly mention, let me get everything set up here. We're having strange things happening to the settings here in StreamYard. They keep, every time I go from one scene to the next, they're completely scrambled. This is an article that we published almost 3 years ago. I put it out there in a live chat for everybody, and it has some good lessons on trading and never trading out of desperation. So, Khalid, I'd like to get your thoughts on what that means, really trading out of desperation. And if they're not trading out of desperation, what if they're in a desperate spot? Like they need something in particular, like a medicine to keep a family member alive. Just give us some lessons from Pakistan.
I'll give you 2 months backwards when we had floods in Pakistan. We literally had villages wiped out. We were digging bodies out of mudslides. This was literally 2 months ago here in Pakistan. I spent 5 days solid in these villages where we were digging bodies out. You would have people coming up to you and saying, listen, even if you got a scrap of food, even if you can help us get this medicine. We were going from that village to a city, buying the medicine and bringing it back for them because they needed it. But when everything collapses and you don't have it, I'm one of those people. I have a pharmacy in my house. I keep every type of medication, every type of thing you would need. And everyone around me knows that. Everyone who lives around me knows that I've got everything you could possibly need. So if in the middle of the night you cut your arm and you need a bandage, you can come knock on my door and get a bandage for me. That's something that I have with me. But not everyone is like that. You have to figure out what your essentials are. The problem is when you get into a desperation state where you don't have money, you don't have options, and you don't have anything to trade, what do? And that's when you start seeing crime go up. That's when you start seeing people breaking into houses to steal something. That's when you see people breaking into attacking someone that has something just to get it. And it's not food they're after. 90% of the time, when they get to a desperation level, it's not because of food. It's because they need medicine. They need supplies. They need gas to cook with. They may have plenty of food, but they may not have gas. And a lot of villages here in Pakistan don't have gas connections from the government. So you're buying the gas cylinders. And anyone who has gas cylinders, when they run out and there's no gas available, they're going door to door saying, listen, do you have a little bit of gas you can put it in my cylinder so I can just cook for the night? So desperation is the last level of humanity, because once you hit that point, then everything becomes legal to you. You're willing to do anything to get out of that desperation level.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So on this vein of bartering, Mike, what are the best things that people can stockpile for the sole purpose of having to barter with after calamities strike? Cigarettes, alcohol. Like, what are the things that if people stack them up, that you're going to have good value or good leverage, I should say, when you're bartering with people?
Yeah, there's obviously needs, survival essentials, and there's also desires. Like, I would not want to be bartering over water, for example. That seems gross to me. You don't, if you have spare water, for example, you don't want to say, hey, I have spare water, and this family's in desperation for water, and I'm going to negotiate for something that I want, likely not something that's a necessity at the point in which you need that kind of thing. But I also don't want to be giving away all the water that I have that's important for my family's own survival. So I would break it down into both survival essentials and then desires to have, things that are good for morale. When I went through Ranger School, which is simulated combat, in 60, 70 days, man, we were some bartering fools over really nothing we really had in abundance. You had a can of Copenhagen, you had a pouch of Levi Garrett chewing tobacco. That can go a long way. Even a pinch of the tobacco could go a long way. I weighed 225, I weighed 230 pounds, but I weighed 220 pounds back then when I was 18, 19 years old. So when I went, I needed more calories than most of the guys who showed up who were under 200 pounds. So I was able to get Levi Garrett, which is chewing tobacco, and trade tobacco for food. So it's about stockpiling things that are going to be needed. And a lot of people think like, oh, I'm going to stockpile ammo. Well, yeah, if you stockpile ammo, that's great for you. You're not necessarily going to be able to trade ammo like 22 LR because most people don't think like you. Most people don't think like me or you guys. Most people don't prep at all. They haven't even fired a firearm, let alone stockpile ammo for one. So I would focus on the essentials. Honey is a good one. Booze is a good one. Things that keep a good shelf life, like hard liquors. I don't even drink. I mean, I drink beer. I don't drink hard alcohol anymore, but I would stockpile some. I mean, I do have some bottles of Crown Royal and some cognac for my foreign friends that seems like to be the gift of choice from the Armenians, especially. But I have that stockpiled, and some of the things that I would exercise is going to these flea markets and going to these swap meets. Swap meets are fun because if you like Harleys, if you like old cars, if you like whatever, there's probably a swap meet for you. Get used to practicing how to barter and negotiate, and then stockpile it all, because you're never going to know what your neighbor's going to need or what people need until crap hits the fan. And by the way, lastly, it's dependent on environmental factors. You know, if you're in rural Montana, most everybody has auxiliary fuel tanks on their truck, and they also have auxiliary fuel tanks at their home. Well, go to Arizona, and it's not the case, right? Yep. So it's very dependent on the circumstance, the situation, and also the environment.
So that's perfect. That rolls directly into the third segment for this evening, which is fuel and medicine, the new gold. So Mr. Clandestine's asked a question here, Mike. What are the top 3 CVS type meds that are going to be needed? So what would you recommend that people stock up on?
Oh, that's an easy one. I mean, topical bacitration. Bacitration is antibacterial, hugely important because scrapes turn into cellulitis, and if they're not cleaned. And imagine your hygiene at its standard. I mean, I shower like 5 times a day. I'm a freak about it. I can't hit the sheets unless I'm taking a 20-minute shower. If your hygiene declines, the chance of bacterial skin infections and also bacterial infections in your body are more likely. Antibiotics are going to address that. They obviously won't address viruses, but viruses aren't going to be the biggest threat. Bacteria is in those circumstances. So a Z-Pack, zithromycin, and all the basic antibiotics, penicillin, zithromycin, is a baseline. And then lastly, I would add, not lastly, because there's many more things that you could add. I would also add a EpiPen. Epinephrine pen is something that you might not even need because you're not allergic to anything. Well, guess what? There's probably people in your family, including your children, that you haven't even identified that they're allergic to something because they haven't been bitten by the bee or, they haven't been exposed to the plant. Have an EpiPen, because the alternative to that is you don't survive, you die.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great advice. So, Clete, I want to come to you and get your thoughts on fuel. So basically, this segment, we're talking medicine and fuel becoming like the new gold.
Right.
What are your recommendations there? Like Mike mentioned, trucks with auxiliary tanks and extra tanks at home, but now you run into a problem of the stability of the fuel as well.
Yep.
So have there been runs on fuel in Pakistan?
Oh yeah.
Walk us through that.
We have seen lines of cars that started at 3 o'clock in the morning at gas stations, and you wouldn't get gas, and when you would get to the gas station, they would only give you maybe $5, $6 worth of gas, and then you'd have to get in line again to get another $5, $6 of gas, because there was such a shortage that it was impossible to buy more than that. And it didn't matter what time of the day you went to the gas station, there would be a line there. We had that same problem with natural gas, because again, a lot of Pakistan is running on gas, especially in the winter time. And when you get into the winter, the problem in a third world country is we have something called load shedding, that for 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night, there's no gas. So you have to have a cylinder of some kind. I've got 3 or 4 25-liter gas cylinders that are full all the time, so that if the gas shuts off and we don't have any way to heat water or to cook, we just connect the cylinder up to it and we do our cooking off of it. That also runs short. So the problem that we have in Pakistan is that we've run out of fuel, we've run out of gas, and then you end up having to stand in line and wait, and it's literally hours upon hours. What's our solution? We get jerry cans, fill those up with fuel. We keep those at home, and if we're traveling, we keep them in the vehicle. That way, if we're stuck someplace, we run out of fuel, we have something to put in. A lot of people don't think about these things, because when you're living in the U.S., and when I lived in the U.S., I never even thought about this stuff. That preparation of having these things in the vehicle. I kept 5 gallons of gas in the car in a can, just in case that if I ran out on the highway somewhere, I'd have enough gas to put in the car, petrol to put in the car, to be able to get to a gas station. But now that I've lived in Pakistan and I've been in these situations where we've had natural disasters and things have run out, and once they run out, you've got to find stuff.
I appreciate that, Clete. Thank you. So we're getting ready to roll into the second half of this segment. Well, I just want to mention a couple quick things. Number one, if you go to survivaldispatch.news, it'll take you to our Substack. When we're broadcasting live, you can see the video right here where Clete is. And directly below it is the daily situation report, the daily sit rep. If you sign up for a free account, you get all the daily sit reps for free, all the way down to my signature. And then below the signature, the sources are for paying guardians, but you get the meat of everything for free. You get our Saturday watch guides. You can see them over here. And essentially a watch guide has links to every single thing we publish for the entire week, whether they be podcasts, learning videos, whatever the case may be. And it's $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year. You get 2.5 months for free. But if you sign up, you also get enrolled in the Survival Dispatch emergency notification system. You get access to our crazy high traffic private signal chat. The intel that goes through there, whether it be experts like Khalid and Mike or other people, private individuals, is pretty phenomenal. You get all 37 of our Survival Dispatch Insider e-mags. We sell them for $9.99 a piece. So you get $370 worth of e-mags for free. And as I just showed, you get sources for our sit reps and you get early access to learning. Now, I want to mention something else while I've got Mike on tonight. And Mike has assembled the A team of open source intel. I'm going to rhyme off some names, and then I'm going to have Mike speak to this. But this is Dead Drop Intel with Mike Glover. So Khalid's part of it. Sarah Adams is part of it. Somebody called JD is part of it. Connect the dots. Matt Butler, Lieutenant Colonel Matt Butler, he was a Green Beret. Like Mike, he's in on it. Ryan Geho, Keith Graves, General Paul Vallely, and a bunch of other people. This is the A team of open source intel. Just go to deaddropintel.org, sign up for a free account. We're blasting out a ton of information these days. Mike, speak to the vision behind Dead Drop Intel, please.
Yeah, it's really simple. It's just I want a consolidated place where we are individually putting out so much information that are pertinent to especially civilian force protection. This idea that information that you receive open source could potentially save your life. Well, that information consolidated, disseminated from the experts. And again, I'm not an intel expert. I've been around intel experts my entire military career because intelligence drives operations. You can't have one without the other. It is a place to go to read articles, to get deep understanding on subject matters that we think are important in the civilian force protection world.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And we'll have some podcasts coming up as well. Now, you won't see me in those because I'm absolutely not a subject matter expert when it comes to intel, like these guys are. So that I'll be the guy behind the scenes, basically. But Mike, I want to ask you a quick question, and then Khalid, we're going to pivot into segment number 4, which is, shadow governance. Basically, you have these markets, these little markets that become mini states and I mean market as an area, not like a small market itself. But Mike, I want you to speak to this. When all this happens, we've had complex coordinated terrorist attacks, multiple cities across the country. We've got massive reduction in first responders because of them either being killed in the secondary and tertiary attacks, or they just said, look, I'm going to go look after my family. How do you maintain law and order after that point, especially when you have private individuals who may or may not have altruistic intentions by taking area? We're back to like the Negan stuff. We're back to the Walking Dead scenario. What is your advice for people? In other words, take the MAG concept, mutual assistance group concept, another step further where you actually have to enforce some element of control.
It's going to be Lord of the Flies. I mean, let me give you the greatest example. Me personally, if there is complete chaos and calamity in institutions that I pay into as a taxpayer no longer really exist, I'm not taking orders from anybody. And I am going to assemble myself an organization of patriots, quickly organize them like it's a time-sensitive target, build out the task org, give them their marching orders, and be very well organized and armed to be able to protect ourselves, our community, and our families. And if you don't think that's how it works, just look at the chaos that's existed throughout our own modern history. The LA riots is a good example. You know who stepped up to defend themselves and their families? The Koreans. You know why? It's ingrained in their culture. They're not going to be victims. They're not going to get drugged out of a semi-truck and beat over the head like Reginald Denny. You try to attack me and my family, I'm going to use a MAC-10. I mean, personally, I don't prefer the MAC-10, but those Koreans in the 80s and 90s apparently did. And so that is profound, because if you think that a first responder is going to come save you when they have to concern themselves with saving their own families, you are grossly mistaken. And if you sit there and wait because you think FEMA is going to fly from Washington, D.C. to where you live, then you'll wait forever until you die. Or you could get on the bandwagon. You could develop your communities, your tribes, even your family coming together is significant, and navigate who's going to be who in the zoo. And I'll tell you, I will be in my community one of the chiefs, because there's a lot of Indians that live in my community, and no offense to them, but I'm not waiting. I'm not waiting for the C-17 to land in Salt Lake City to bring up the National Guard. I'm going to handle things myself, and I don't propose violence. I propose defense.
So, Mike, before I go to Khalid to get into segment 4, the intelligence that Sarah and Khalid have brought to the table specifies a window between November and Ramadan, which is February 18th, as a key time when this Islamic army is planning on attacking us. And I use the term Islamic army because all the terrorists are under that banner now. That's not a lot of time. What are the highest priority things that people need to do between now and then, especially from a security perspective?
Security perspective, it's have an armament. I mean, your self-defense EDC 9mm pistol, if you're lucky, 15+1 in the chamber in your waistband is not enough. And so a lot of people think self-defense, pistol in the waistband. If you talk to boomers, then it's their 357 revolver, their 1911. Your 7 rounds in your 1911 is not enough. And so build out your armament for all the variables: hunting, defense at different distances, optics, night vision, lasers. Well, Mike, that's pretty extreme. I don't care. If it's extreme to you, then save the surplus for me. Also, I would connect with people who are more capable, that have the ability to do things that you cannot. You're not going to be an operator in 3 months. That's not going to happen. But if you have a skill set, that's your strength. I don't care if it's sewing or telling jokes. You're good for morale. You have a skill set. Find the people who have alternative skill sets and pull your resources together. Because somebody might want to hear a joke when they call off security. And if you think you're going to get it all done by yourself, it's just you as a lone wolf protecting your family, you'll just die because you can't pull security 24 hours a day. There's a reason a team in the infantry is 4 to 5 guys, because you have to rotate. A third of the organization is going to be up pulling security while 2/3 will be down, sleeping, resting, refitting, and you need to rotate through that. So it's imperative that you understand that the basics of how this works, because it could be a volatile circumstance where if you're flapping and flailing, well, then you'll flap and fail all the way until, the worst case scenario.
One quick question, then I'm going to Khalid. The age-old question. If you could only have one gun / caliber, what would it be?
My mind's changed on this. It used to be 5.56, but based on where I live in the rural environment that I live in, with approximate distances that I could see my neighbors, not that I've range found their homes, but 573 meters. So I would have 308, because 308 is still supersonic at 500 meters. At 5 football fields, you still have a reliable ballistic calculated shooting solution, where at 5.56 you're about to drop off because you're transonic.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. So Khalid, coming back to you here. So the segment 4, shadow governance, markets becoming mini states. So in other words, you end up with these little fiefdoms, and now you've got people even enforcing taxes. You get people are very territorial, potentially checkpoints, escorts, protection rackets, all of that sort of stuff. I would hazard to guess that you've seen that over in your neck of the world. So give us some insight on that, Khalid, please.
Okay, before I jump in that, there's somebody in the comment section who's talking about how the hospital threat isn't credible. If you think it's not credible, we've heard that directly from the terror camps in Afghanistan. We're the source on it. So you're welcome to believe it's not credible, but when they hit your hospitals, then I'll ask you if it was credible or not, because we've spent 30 episodes talking about this threat and going through piece by piece explaining this. Now, when you talk about what happens after the threat, the attacks happen, you are going to have all kinds of crazy government systems set up. You will have them based on neighborhoods. You will have them based on areas. You will have them based on shopping districts. You'll find people, and we've seen this here, when the terrorists were in control of certain areas here in Pakistan, the safe areas, they had checkposts set up. So when you'd enter, they would stop you, check your vehicle, talk to you, check your ID, check what you've got, and then they would only after that let you through. And when they let you through, they would still be watching your vehicle. We manned a check post. We would literally write down the vehicle number, the driver's name, the driver's ID card number, and his phone number, so that if we needed to contact him and find out where he was at a certain point, we could do that as well. What ends up happening is as you're entering certain areas, the check post will say, well, if you want to come in, you need to pay this much. And that's your entry fee. And that area may have groceries, it may have fruits, it may have vegetables. The best example I can give you is how jails and prisons operate. When you look at how a jail and a prison operates, it's exactly what we're talking about right now. They have barter systems, they have protection rackets. They are an exact example of what we're talking about right now. That if you want something, you have to give something. And cigarettes and candies and commissary, those are things you have to trade for. And it's something that people understand. If you understand how the jail and prison systems work, if you know somebody's been to jail, ask them, how does the system work inside there? When you want security, you have to pay a tax. So someone is watching your area. We've seen it here in Pakistan. We literally had to deal with the terrorists here and set up security systems, set up watch commanders, set up our own armories. Everything Mike is talking about, we've had to do here. The problem that you have is that this is something that is foreign to the U.S.
So on the comments that you made with regards to the culture in prisons, inquiring minds want to know, is that from firsthand experience?
No, but I know a lot of people that have been in the prisons.
I'm just kidding. I'm putting you on the spot.
No, but it's something that we've studied, because when you talk about how a system will run, the best example is when you look at the jails, because those guys they're locked in one place.
Mm-hmm.
They're stuck. They only have a limited amount of things, and if they want something, they have to trade for it.
It's a great analogy for sure. I couldn't agree more with that. So before I go back to Mike, same question for you, Khalid. If you could only have one gun, one caliber, what would it be? And by the way, I don't know if you saw it, Mike. One of our loyal followers chipped in $5 because you didn't range your neighbors. So.
I refuse.
Khalid, what's your choice for caliber, rifle and caliber?
Well, I've got three that I keep with me.
No, you're only allowed one. This is like a conflicted question. You get one choice.
Right. Then I keep my Lapua. I keep my 308. That's the perfect weapon for me to have for distance and for close up.
Fair enough. Okay, appreciate that. So, Mike, on this topic where Khalid started us down this road, I want to get your thoughts on a couple things here. Number one, how did disputes get resolved, and who's enforcing the decision on those disputes? And then the third part, which ties it all together, what are the implications of institutionalizing basically criminal governance during prolonged crisis? So roll with whatever piece that you want to first, but how do you resolve differences? How do you enforce those differences? And what happens when the criminals are in charge for an extended period of time?
I'll give two real world examples, one personal and one that people should know. Do we remember Chaz?
Yep.
Chaz was a makeshift city, essentially, that was confiscated outside of Seattle, Washington. And when Chaz was built out, a amateur rapper essentially took over as the ground force commander. And when he did that, everybody in Chaz was like, freedom, finally freedom. Well, the first thing they did was set up checkpoints.
Yep.
The second thing they did was disseminate AR-15s. The third thing they started doing is bartering at checkpoints and taking money for access, and then started stealing people's stuff. And so quickly, an anti-fascist movement, because Antifa was certainly part of it, which is now a terrorist organization, quickly turned into fascism, because that's how it works. And a personal example, when I was in Libya, Libya is very militant. It is broken down into tribes. An example is the Zintans. And I'm very fond of the Zintans despite their criminal behavior. But when Gaddafi fell, the Zintans were known for being the group or the gang or the tribe that, you know, they're provincially located demographically or geographically in their area, and they have boundaries. The Zintans don't go into the Tripolations area. They stay in their AO. But they were known for stealing cars. And the head of the Zintans was actually a friend of mine. I befriended him because I'm a friendly guy and I want to build rapport with the key players. So when I built rapport with the Zintan commander, one time I had to get from my base, a remote base on the Mediterranean, and which used to be Gaddafi's son compound, his special operations compound. I had to get my guys back and into the U.S. Embassy compound, but it was dangerous. We knew there was AQ, IM, specifically Islamic Maghreb activity in the area. So I called this guy and I said, hey, this is a situation and I need help. He said, well, Mike, you know, what's in it for me? I'm like, I got a couple handles of Jack Daniels and I might even have a car for you. How about a Toyota Tundra? And so I traded him a Toyota Tundra and handles of liquor that he couldn't get for unlimited access to his organization to transport my guys in the worst case scenario. And so I had a convoy of guys with nickel plated pistols and AK-47s that helped overthrow Gaddafi that were transporting me into our embassy, where we'd walk up to or drive up to a checkpoint and people were like, put their hands up and get on the ground. And we would use them for safe transport. He also offered me a wife and a house at the top of Zintan in the neighborhood of the Zintan Mountains, which I almost took that. I almost did that. But the point of that is you better be friends with the chiefs. And if you're friends with the chiefs, if you know who's who in your community, then you know who to go to coordinate for these type of things. Everything from safe passage to checkpoints to who's going to provide security locally for you. It will quickly turn into that. And hey, there's that, what's that show with the Mormons and the pioneers? It's on Netflix. It's a great show. Coming across the plains, fighting Native Americans, and it's this big conflict. And it's like the Lord of the Flies and the pioneer version of that. It will quickly evolve into that, even for people who have the greatest intent. Because when you have desperation, because you know in order to get things accomplished means the difference between your family eating or them potentially perishing, you're going to be bold. And so I would just prepare for that kind of activity. And there's many examples of it throughout history.
Yeah, right on, Mike. Appreciate that. Just want to pull this up quickly here. That's the guy you were referring to, Raz Simone.
Yeah, Raz.
Yeah, the guy who took over Chaz. So I actually worked with a guy whose home was in that area, and that's what drove him out of the Pacific Northwest to come down here to the Southeast, was to get away from that.
Just a quick sidebar. The Seattle mayor communicated to the chief of police of Seattle that they were not to enforce any laws unless it was a mass casualty. And then when people called in because they were being raped, assaulted, violently attacked, they said, sorry, we can't help you. It's the precipice. The reason I started American Contingency, because I realized, in my own opinion, I would always say, you know, politicians do not affect and impact your life. That's a lie, because they do. Because they have policies, they can communicate to the elected officials, including your sheriff, your chief of police, if they're not the right person, and they can literally dictate what they do, including enforcing laws in your backyard.
Yeah, that's a great example. So, Khalid, we're rolling into the final segment, which is survival recovery. Basically, you know, this long period of time to get things back on the rails. And the research that I did on this, as far as this happening to existing communities over, the history of mankind, is that the government officials had to find a way to regain the trust of the people. And so they had to be able to get infrastructure back up and running, the water, the sewer, like all of those sort of things.
Yep.
Man, that's a pretty heavy lift if you've been through hell and back. And how do you finance that stuff? Like, because the currency now, the fiat currency's gone, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking alternative forms of currency. I'm just curious, what are the steps to get beyond that? I mean, you've seen countries in the Middle East, Africa in particular, that have been completely wiped out, like Zimbabwe, and then slowly on the uptick back, and they're all corrupt as it gets. That's the follow-up question for you and Mike. What do you got to do to reestablish all of that stuff? And how do you do it without people? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. How do you end up without people being corrupt in the process?
Well, the first problem you have is financing. What we've seen mostly in like Southeast Asia, whether it be India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Afghanistan, what you see is a lot of communities get together and they pool funds, or they pool their skills, and they'll dig a well. They'll use that for water. If you have a stream close by, you can build some kind of electrical generation system that can at least run a light in the house. Because this is a step-by-step process. This is not going to happen bang and you've got full electricity in homes, or you've got clean water in homes. What you have to do is go step by step. First, you need water. Then you need electricity, because to pump water to houses, to pump water up, you either need a bucket system or you need electricity. So what we've seen in these areas is communities get together, they pool whatever money or whatever skills or whatever items they may have that can be used for this project, and they put those things together and they start doing this way. This is not something that you can count on a government to do. Once the world collapses, or once the community collapses, your government has no power. Even your elected officials cannot, they have no power, because everything's gone. And once it's gone, then nothing matters. So it's up to the communities to come together. It's the hardest part is getting people out of the way, because you're gonna have so many troublemakers that are going to steal, that are going to hog resources, that trying to figure out a way to make that work is very difficult. Because you may say, look, we dug this well, everyone is allowed 20 gallons a day. You'll get people to come in and they start taking control, and they put a tax on it. So if you want more than 20, then you can pay me this much. If you want more than 30, you can pay me this much. If you want to pay more than 50, you can pay me this much. That's where your community policing system, your what we call in Pakistan a jarga, that's where they come into play, where the elders of that community sit down and say, well, no, wait, not for this. This is a community thing. You are not allowed to take control of this. You are not allowed to sell this. Everyone pooled in, everyone got together, and they accomplished this. We got water, we got electricity. You don't get to charge anything for this, because everyone put in for this. But that means that you have to, before you make that step, you have to build a team of elders, senior people that have weapons, that have power, that have control. Like Mike was saying, the chiefs. You put those chiefs together so that they can oversee the next step, the rebuilding step. Because if you let the community run it, it's going to get abused.
No, that's great firsthand experience or advice there. So, Mike, very specific question for you. Governance takes a lot of time and effort and money to do, right? And the criminals, they don't have to play by the same rules. So if we've had this prolonged period of illicit distributors, criminal gangs running the show on particular resources, how do you get, call it civilization, to come back up again when these other guys have already established all these beachheads and they don't have the overhead that government has, and they can deliver stuff at a fraction of the price?
My sum up answer is a well-organized militia. I mean, that's how you get it done. I mean, there's a reason why Green Berets get paid to fly into foreign nations with ammo and weapons for foreigners and build up their community and give them confidence through their task organization and their technical skill sets. It's because that's how the world works. And you know who's already organized is all these gang affiliates and organizations, because they're called organizations. I mean, they're organization and organized and criminal syndicates, and they have a chain of command, a chain of custody. And so for us to take it back is not depending on your local city councilman. Your local city councilmen and women are not going to organize blocking positions to help your town. Law and order, when it goes to hell in a handbasket, you are. Or if you're a vet, or if you're a former law enforcement officer, or if you're just a man who has an understanding of how this works, you'll be that guy. And I'm not saying you have to activate a county or city group that's just this large organization. You could advocate for that, but the priority would be at your family level. How are you going to take care of families, homes, properties, and people when this happens? And the best way to do it is form an organization to be able to do just that. Again, not external to like go into town and lock it down and do all these things, but to take care and isolate the people you love. If at a minimum, that's the way that you organize, for sure. Look, I was a former sergeant major. I mean, it doesn't mean anything in the context of my experience. It's like, okay, I was a sergeant major, an E9. But what it does mean is my brain understands how task organization works. And so I'm not going to, I would have a duty and responsibility in my own community to step up and be like, stop. Just stop. Because I know guys are going to, the mayor will come forward and like, we will organize. It's like, get out of the way, nerd. Let some people who handle catastrophes manage this. And I'll cooperate with officials. But I know exactly what will happen. Most, especially first responders, are going to abandon their roles to take care of their families, as they should. We just need to be able to collaborate and cooperate with the ones that are in place. Like, I have a good relationship with my local sheriff's department. Some of the guys used to work for my company. They used to teach tactics. I trust them. I'm going to have conversations with them. And they know Mike Glover's home is going to be one of the first places they rendezvous to have those conversations. Because I'm not just going to sit back and be idle or let them strap hang. I'm going to support them. And I'm going to go to them. And if they have a guy who's a chief who steps forward and says, I'm the guy. Well, guess what? I'm going to cooperate with that guy as a single focal point to enable us to organize and operate together. You don't have the bandwidth to communicate broadly. But if you're talking to one talking head who has his crap together, then you're going to be more successful, especially if it's a guy in that position. If it's the sheriff, if it's a deputy, if it's a firefighter, we all have roles to play. Kind of figure out what your role is now. So when crap hits the fan, you're prepared to go into that role.
One last question, Mike. And our friend Randy has touched on this previously, and you alluded to it at the beginning here. My understanding is the Green Berets are the only special forces that we have who can go into a war-torn country and actually rebuild it in every aspect. That's part of the repertoire for the Green Berets. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, it's the main mission set, which there's, I think, 7. It might change. But it's foreign internal defense. And I specialized in counterterrorism, foreign internal defense. I just did a reacts video for my YouTube channel, at Mike Glover channel, where I talked about the Iraqi counterterrorism force. We went into Iraq in the invasion, pulled back who we thought were good recruits, isolated them in Jordan, assisted, trained, and advised them, and then went back into the country to do counterterrorism joint operations with an Iraqi signature, an Iraqi face. That's what we specialize in. We specialize in operating behind enemy lines, developing auxiliary organization, partisan forces, just like the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, did in World War II, and utilize those force multipliers in order to succeed against a common enemy.
I appreciate the clarification there very much. So, Mike, I haven't done this since you've been on the podcast, but that intro Carnival thing, that you're using on your pro tips for Carnival, we now have the Carnival Hero of the Day. They sponsor the Carnival Hero of the Day. So we always get to start like this. I love this. Okay, so over to you, Mike, for the last play. I feel like we're doing Monday Night Football every time I hear that go off. It's freaking awesome. Anyway, this is the Hero of the Day brought to you by Carnival. U.S. Marine Corps Lance Corporal Michael Darwin Personette was killed in action on September 23rd, 1968 in Quang Tri Province, South Vietnam. Michael was 20 years old and from Cassopolis, Michigan, G Company, 2nd Battalion, 26 Marines. Remember Michael today. He is an American hero. It's I grew up with Walter Cronkite on the news every night. I'm sure Khalid did too. He's not much younger than I am. And so I grew up with all the footage coming out of Vietnam at a very young age. I've always had a special place, for Vietnam vets. It was a shit war that we basically send our men to death for no good reason. Next one up is reader submitted story of the day. And this is pretty good. This is interesting. This came from Dale, of course. Wow. And if you're wondering who Dale is one of a number of news maniacs who doesn't sleep 24/7, pumps in all kinds of interesting stuff to our private Signal chat, which is if you sign up as a Guardian, you get an invite to it. This came from him. So just imagine Obama's still president. You post a funny meme that gets some retweets and likes, then you forget about it the next day. Living life, going to work, seeing family, doing all the normal things for the next 5 years, including all of Trump's presidency. And then suddenly Biden's goons show up at your door, drag you off, and you have no idea what's going on, only to be told you're going to jail for that meme from 5 years ago that you and everyone else has long forgotten about that actually happened. I couldn't be happier that this wrong has finally been righted. Well done for hanging in there and seeing it through. So Douglas Mackey, here's his complete exoneration. He was charged, put in jail because he put out a meme that insulted Hillary and also told people, oh yeah, you can text your vote in for Hillary. It was all satire. And it's just disgusting how these agencies were operating under the old Biden admin. So this is classic. This is extra. This wasn't really part of it, but I have to throw this. I have to throw this in. Have you guys seen this? Did you see this today, Mike?
Today, yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you who haven't seen this, this is the Presidential Walk of Fame that Donald Trump just paid for to have done. You got to wait for the entire list of presidents to go through. It's only 25 seconds, but it's good. Clinton, W, Obama, Donald Trump, the auto pen. And then back to Donald Trump. He has got an amazing sense of humor, no question. So let's pivot to the conflicting question of the night. This is a good one, Mike. I don't know if you heard it earlier, but after being forced out of your bug out location by looters, you and your bug out group of 20 people, half of them children, walk for hours in a snowstorm looking for shelter. You find a 45-foot insulated truck trailer that would be the perfect shelter. Within days of moving in, a family contracts a life-threatening virus. Sickness and death could spread through the entire group if they stayed. Throwing them out into the snowstorm would surely mean the infected family's death. What would you do in this situation and why? And I'm going to go to Clede first on this one, just so we can pick his brain. What are you doing with these people, Clede?
Look, the problem is that infection is going to spread to your family as well. I mean, the longer you keep them there, you're going to have that problem. What I would do is go out and find someplace else where you can move them to, not put them out in the cold, but find someplace else you can move them to and move them there and settle them there. And say, look, we can't take the risk of us getting infected, but we're not going to throw you out in the cold. This is where you stay.
That's actually a really good answer. Well done. Mike, can you improve upon that?
Yeah, I taught a class this weekend for Jack Osborne's men's retreat on a Dakota fire. And if you're not familiar with it, just Google it. But building a Dakota fire in a shelter in advance would probably take me under the snowy conditions an hour. I could have that in an hour. My guys could do jumping jacks while they're doing that, and then I'll pull all those dudes out of the truck, put them into their shelter, use some Lysol disinfectant or some hand sanitizer, and make sure it's really clean, and then put my people into the tractor trailer, so everybody's happy.
Yeah, well done. And there's Jack Osborne. Mike, what was his impression of Carnival? Just curious.
Well, he had a personal chef there that was doing the cooking for the retreat, and he showed us some very specific techniques, which I'm going to share with the guys at Carnival and you guys. I think it's tomorrow, and then we put it out and said, "Hey, this is like survival food," and people ate it, and it was gone in like 30 seconds. It was a big plate of it, and it was so good. And I couldn't believe how good it was because this chef cooked it great, but he just did the basic stuff. He just added a lot more salt, and he had a whole theory on it, and it was a hit, man. It's not survival food to me. It's just like food. It's like good steak that's quickly cooked.
No, I appreciate that, Mike. And for anybody out there who hasn't heard of them, these are our premier sponsor. They help us defray our expenses. If you've watched our podcast before, you know that we spend $4,500 a month just in software charges alone. It costs a lot of money to pull all this together, but this is freeze-dried 100% American meat. So the beef, American ranchers, grass-finished, no mRNA, no antibiotics, no histamines. This bag has 6 servings in it, weighs 6 ounces. Like Mike said, you can reconstitute it in the blink of an eye, 5 to 10 minutes, and you have 1.5 pounds of premium raw steak that you can flavor or cook however you want. They also have chicken, and they have a pork as well. And Randy was a chicken maniac for years. And when they started gluing chicken together, he swore off of it. He wouldn't eat it anymore. And I don't blame him. I won't eat that crap either. When Dean sent him the Carnival stuff, he eats the stuff every day. None of us can stock this stuff up. Dean would have to send us like a 53-foot semi full of stuff to have any chance of lasting in any of our pantries. It's just amazing stuff. Let me see a couple other quick things just to wrap up with here. In addition to thanking Carnival, I want to thank all the paying Guardian members out there. SurvivalDispatch.news, sign up for a free account. If you pay $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year, you get 2.5 months for free. You get an invite to our super crazy busy Signal chat. It's an amazing resource. We never anticipated it was going to turn out the way it did. You get enrolled in the Survival Dispatch emergency notification system. You get JJ Morris's instructional videos early. You get all 37 of Survival Dispatch Insider e-magazines. We sell them for $10 a piece, $370 for free. Now I got a couple things to show you guys. You might wait till we test these. The POC links finally arrived.
Those are awesome.
So I have 4 of these, and Dr. Michael Fabian and I are going to be testing them this weekend. So check this out. These go over LTE. You don't have to pay anything. The SIM card comes with a global SIM card. You pair them together with a smartphone app, and they can communicate over the LTE network. So very low bandwidth requirements. You know, like when you're on 5G and you lose it, you go to LTE and you can't download pictures and stuff. That's how little a bandwidth this needs. But this is really cool. This is the only radio that we've found that does this. If you left one of these in your truck, Mike, and you went, off grid, like you were hiking, hunting or whatever, these are also GMRS radios. And if you're within range of one that can touch the LTE network, it will bridge GMRS to LTE and vice versa. So you could almost drop them like breadcrumbs, right? You could drop one of these, say, every mile or so if you were going in 4 or 5 miles into the woods, and you'd have relays all the way back to the world. They got GPS tracking. They can do all the things like a Garmin InReach Mini does where it drops breadcrumbs where you are. Really looking forward to testing these, by the way. Actually, I want to ask you a quick question. My thoughts are, if these work out, that the most economical option for people to have multiple forms of communications, 3 is 2, 2 is 1, 1 is none, Garmin InReach Mini, which you can get for $350-$380 on special. Tether it to your phone, uses the Iridium satellites, $12 a month, or just put it on pause. You can pause at any time. I'm thinking these are a good option. And then the third one, shortwave radios, which are expensive, like that bounces off the ionosphere, shortwave, high frequency. If you were going to pick three, Mike, what would they be? And Khalid, I want to hear if you were going to pick three, what would they be? But Mike, you go first.
Yeah, CDMA and look, the cell phone infrastructure has changed recently, including T-Mobile onboarding Starlink, and that I am very curious to that technology because allegedly, if you're without reception, it immediately enables Starlink to allow you to communicate over the horizon.
I can attest to that. We have T-Mobile. We've been in places in Georgia where there's no cell phone signal. It's flipped over to the T-Mobile Starlink, and it works like a champ.
So I'm about to swap over. That would be my primary. I like Verizon is aggravating because I could be in an urban hide site texting an ex-girlfriend from a Nokia cell phone using, my fat thumbs high, HI in Iraq in like 2007, but I can't freaking go to Park City in rural areas of Utah and text. I'm onboarding that. That's my primary. My alternate is going to likely be your solution. If you tell me that's good to go, I'm going to get it. And then my contingency is going to be GMRS over Starlink. So having a data tethering of using local line of sight radios that work off frequency, but could data and frequency hop over the horizon with Starlink.
Yeah, it's an off ramp essentially, and shoot it through there. So the Garmin InReach Mini, by the way, uses the Iridium satellites, which you used when you served. But we have way better coverage here from Iridium than they have in Afghanistan, for example. So
my only concern with Garmin InReach, just like with Garmin, it's proprietary. And Garmin's smart model, this is a 7X, they change everything nearly every year. Like when I found, probably shouldn't say this out loud, I found like 7 Garmins that I used when I was in the CIA, and they were sitting in a drawer, and I'm like, score. And I go to look them up, and they're not compatible with anything anymore. You can't even plug them into a computer, and you can't sell them because there's not, I mean, they belong to the CIA, but you can't get any data and utilize them. So I just am a little skeptical because I'm afraid the technology being so proprietary might change with something that happens. But that's my only caveat.
Yeah, I would say that would require an overhaul of how the Iridium satellite network communicates, because the Garmin InReach Mini communicates with the military satellites for GPS and the Iridium satellites for comms. So I hear what you're saying about Garmin, though, but I think we're relatively safe there. But again, 3 is 2, 2 is 1, 1 is none. So all those things. Here's the cool thing, by the way, for the people out there. If these pass muster, and you can look them up at POC -1 Ultra, POC link is the website. Khalid, I could take one of these, I could send it to you, and with a smartphone app, I can give you a code, and you can become part of our group. And if you notice, it's got a PTT button on it, push to talk. Yeah. Here's the other cool thing. If Mike, let's say he had Starlink or had a T-Mobile on Starlink, and he doesn't have his POC link with him, he can use the app to communicate over the Iridium satellite back down to you on this thing anywhere in the world. Yeah. It's really interesting. I'm going
to pick some of those up, because here, the problem we have here in Pakistan with communication is we're still on 4G here. And when the 4G network collapsed, we're down to LTE or 3G. And then you have no data at all. So our backup is either CBs or walkie-talkies. And the walkie-talkie range, you know how far that is. So we don't have a lot of communication options. And if you buy I bought a Chinese communication system, walkie-talkie. Okay. I actually had to buy a frequency from the military. They would not work without a frequency. So my frequency is now known to the military. So we had to ditch those as well.
That's crazy. I'm trying to get this to come up. It's interesting. They've got these things really secure. Dang it. And I made a typo, of course. So it's going to time me out. jeepers. You can't even get into this app without a one-time, it's a 2FA type deal, right? Here we go. It's going to let me in. So I don't know how this is going to look on here, but we'll see when it comes up. So you can see I've got, well, if I get it the right way, so the light's not affecting it. I've got, well, you can see the icons. I've got 4 of these together in a group, right? And if I go to, if I go into the group that's named, you should be able to see there's a button that says PTT on my phone right there.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I press that, and I think this guy's on, testing.
Yep.
That's a really interesting value add as well, though, right, Mike? Like if you're on the satellite with a T-Mobile phone like this one, you can still communicate to these radios. It costs nothing, by the way. Everybody else charge you for the SIM card year round. This costs nothing. It comes with a global SIM. You're good to go. And here, one last thing, it can take 2 different SIM cards, so you can use different networks and not just what their network is. Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty interesting stuff. Anyway, that's it. We won't go down that rabbit hole any further. We'll be back tomorrow night. We'll have the next episode in our Long War series. We're calling it the hunger clock. So food insecurity, panic buying, failed logistics, rationing. You know, hunger is a big deal. It's like a systemic collapse. And if you've watched us for any period of time, you've heard me say we're never more than 3 missed meals away from anarchy. That's what that's all about. These two have seen that firsthand. I haven't, thank goodness. But that's it. So between now and tomorrow night, please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America.
Bless America.
Enjoy the closing video. It's a new.
Sometimes we need reminding how easily we forget heroes that came before us. Some are living now, we haven't been. The stories of America are still relevant today. A reminder who we are in the American way. The intentional division to control us and to hate. Now's the time to tell our stories and what makes America so great. The price paid for our freedom, enemies desperate to erase. The foundations of God's mercy of a nation covered in His grace. The stories of America are still relevant today. A reminder who we are in the American way. The beauty of America is what we're fighting for. God bless the storytellers, we want more. Sometimes we need reminding how easily we forget heroes that came before us. Some are living